Time to zip up that fanny pack because you're stopping up at the card pool. I'm your host, Stu Galetta.
And I'm Kyle Robertson.
And today we are concluding our set of Nemesis with the review and ranking of how we assess this set.
We are indeed, and again, this is part 4 of our 4-part series on Nemesis, where if you take a look back at some of our previous videos, you can see some of the hidden gems we picked from this set, and the money cards and most valuable sought-after cards of the set. But to begin, let's explain a little bit about how we do these videos once again. So to take a look at Nemesis, we're going to start by analyzing the themes and mechanics of the set, followed by our hidden gems and then money cards. Take a little bit of look at the lore and story that's going on here behind the cards, and then the overall impact of the set. And finally, at the end here, we'll give it a grade of either bronze, silver, gold, or if it's really good, all the way up to platinum.
Yep. So first, why not dive into themes and mechanics that we got here?
All right, let's get right into it, yeah.
And Kyle, let's have you take a crack at the first one.
Sure, well, the biggest thing, and actually the only new mechanic that showed up in Nemesis and all of the Mercadian Masks block in total, is this one called Fading, and we have Parallax Wave here as a good example of Fading. Now what Fading does is, Fading always is accompanied by a number, in this case Fading 5. So it starts out with 5 Fading counters on it, and then at the beginning of each of your upkeeps, you then remove a Fade counter from the card, and then once it has no Fade counters to remove anymore, the card is sacrificed. And there are creatures with this, there are enchantments with this. I actually
artifacts
think
even.
that, yes, artifacts have it too. There's no instant and sorcery with Fading, that'd be weird. But yeah, it just wouldn't work. But Fading was an interesting kind of attempt by Wizards to print these cards that are more powerful than would normally be printed for their mana cost. Like another one I can think of right off the top of my head is Blastoderm, which is a 5/5 for 4 mana with Fading and Shroud. So, a pretty, back then at least, decent creature for the mana cost, but it only lived for a couple of turns because it had Fading 2 or 3 or something like that.
The options to destroy it were just kind of limited.
Right, exactly. So, you get a big benefit of a more powerful card, but at a price that it's going to go away and you have limited time to use it.
This is similar to the effect that we see with Echo, but Echo being more abrupt and when the creature is going to be removed from the field, and we see this with the most iconic card being Karmic Guide.
Right.
And then eventually going into other stuff here that's a little bit more niche. I believe Fading came out first before all those.
It did, yes.
And so like that's like their attempt taking a second crack at Fading, but giving a little bit more variety.
Right, and I don't know if Echo is necessarily better than Fading. I suppose it depends on the cards, but I think Fading is meh for the most part, but on cards like Parallax Wave, where the Fading actually matters, it can be really good. Yeah, I mean, like we discussed in our previous video, I mean, look at this card. You can Oblivion Ring 5 things, you could save things from targeted removal, you could just straight up blink your own things. It's crazy how good something like that is.
Well, this one shows Fading at a more superiority than the other ones that have Fading. Usually the Fading is more of a downside unless you're using Proliferate, but we talk about this in our other videos as well. So.
Yeah, so take a look back at some of those to see more about Fading in general. But
we'll go on to the next thing, and this one is not as much of a mechanic, but more of a subtype that we have here. The next thing is our Spell Shapers.
Yes.
Now, these are creatures that have typically associated with some form of discard effect in which that they get some sort of ability from a little bit of mana tapping it, and then you have to use a card discard as a cost. You see these sprinkled throughout Magic decently, but in this set it is like, what, a reoccurring theme for it? Or is it the first?
In the Mercadian Masks block, this was the first time Spell Shapers in a type actually showed up. I'm sure there are probably previous examples, but after this, we got a lot more Spell Shaper creatures because they were very popular. Yeah,
and this one that we have here is one from the Hidden Gems that I got, and gotta say, I love this card a lot for what it does. I mean, you don't really see this as a tribe, because,
No, there's no support for a tribe at all, really.
I mean, you'd have to use a lot of stuff. It'd be a workaround. Is there even a Spell Shaper commander?
No, there is not. Oh, actually, no, there are Spell Shapers that are legendary, but none of them are great commanders. I mean, there's like Jolrael, who animates lands.
Which is an awesome commander.
There's Vanessa, you discard to bounce. It's okay, you know.
So it's more on a theme, gimmickish theme, as opposed to like a tribal.
I wouldn't do it, but still.
But you could make it.
Yeah, you could, probably. But they're interesting because they tack spell-like effects onto creatures with a discard ability, and usually if you're going to play these, it's because the discard is relevant in your deck.
Yes. Or the effect is that good. One or the other. The green one here being that it has an amazing way to mana fix.
Yeah.
So again, pluses, minuses, all depends on where you're sticking them.
Very interesting stuff. Now, another kind of subtype that wasn't necessarily a subtype, but just a theme. We have the recruiter cycle of creatures from this.
This one's very
There was
big.
one in each color. They were all rares. We're looking at the blue one, Sea Hunter, right here. They all kind of focused around a certain tribe. This one focuses on merfolk. There was one for goblins. There was one for elves, etc., etc. So we see these cards, in my opinion, as very powerful tutors in that they are creature-based, which is rare, actually, and they get around mana cost.
Yeah.
Right to the field. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's uber for a creature right there. It's really good. But the main thing also about it, like you said, cutting corners for cost and stuff like that, for some types, like we see here with merfolks, can be useful. Sometimes you're bringing out a card that's more important as opposed to cheating out its cost. So it has its place, it has its worth. In red, it's really strong for the goblins just to recruit out stuff. But we really beat this one down in our money videos. So
and they're all pretty similar, so...
Yeah. So check it out in part 3 if you want to see a little bit more of an in-depth dive about this mechanic.
Definitely. And then going on to our next one, Stu, if you want to talk a little bit about these seal cards here.
Yeah, I love them when they're in Finding Dory. They're great. But yeah, seal as the enchantments. These are these guys that are recurable if you're running an Enchantress build, or they are very serviceable just leaving them out there on the field for what they do. In this case, we're looking at Seal of Cleansing, in which you can just go ahead and pop this little guy off the field and destroy a target artifact or enchantment. They're usually very serviceable in what they can reach for. They can sit out on the field, be ready for whenever you need them, and also scare away your opponents from casting certain permanents.
Yeah, having spells in permanent form, a lot like the Spell Shapers, is always a good thing in my opinion. And they can add to devotion, they can add to counts of certain cards on the field. That's great, and as you said, instant speed, you can sacrifice them whenever you want to get this kind of effect. It's just really good. I like having those kind of options.
Definitely have their plays, and they're also kind of plays on other cards that we do see, like Disenchant. This was one of your hidden gems that we found. So if you're interested in finding more cards that are similar or more information about this one, check out part 1, right?
Yes, and there were other seals that were printed later on in actually the Planar Chaos set. There was a whole set of color-shifted seals.
They brought this back on and off here and there.
Yes.
Commander Chronicler, stuff like that. So they do see play, and some decks they shine the best in.
Yeah, so they're definitely worth noting, I think.
And then finally, we got our last one here, and Kyle, this one, well, it's about another type that you brought up, so take it away.
It is indeed. So we have the kind of, it's not really a named mechanic, but free spells, alternative costs. So Daze is a good example of that.
Definitely.
So you can return an island you control to its owner's hand instead of paying Daze's mana cost, for example, on this one. There's a bunch of different cycles within this single set, actually, that require
for all colors.
Different things. Yeah, some of them just require you to return a certain land to your hand. Some require you to have a certain land and your opponent to have a certain land in order to play it for free. But free spells is always a good thing, let's be honest.
As long as you're always able to get it for the free cost. But again, you can always cast it for its regular cost. It just feels bad. It's like, oh, I had a coupon for a buy one, get one, but I bought 2 for full price.
And some of them were quite conditional. Like, if you control a swamp and your opponent controls a plains, cast this for free. I don't know. That's a little bit too...
Yeah, if it was the other way around, because you just Urborg and then it works.
Right. So, I don't know. I'd rather a card like Daze over a card like that, but still.
Well, that's because you love your counter spells.
I mean, that's true. But when you have more control over it, they're better. And they didn't really break the game with any of these necessarily, so they're not all that powerful, but Daze is a pretty good example.
See, this
I
is
think,
where
as
I'm
we
more
argued before.
Simic and you're more, is it? Because I don't care about the control necessarily. Let's just let it go run wild. We'll see how it flows out.
Right. It was all right. In this set, they didn't really go all out on this. There were some decent cards, but nothing really spectacular.
Yeah, they had their plays. Very anti-meta for some of them. Worth diving into if you're interested for those kind of effects to try to get out of like casting spells. You're going for storm counts or such like that.
Yeah. But it was interesting because, like I said before, the whole Mercadian Masks block, they made a point of not introducing any new mechanics keyworded whatsoever except for fading. That was the only one. It was only in this set.
I still like Mercadian Masks, but we'll go back. That was our first video we ever made, actually.
Yeah.
You know what? Link to that in the corner right now. Why not? To see how
right.
different it is. And God, we sound awful in that video. But onto the hidden gems, like that video itself. We're going to go ahead and talk about the cards that we found. Now, again, we dive into this a lot more in our first videos, part 1 and 2.
Yes.
For what I saw, I was thoroughly impressed, and I was on a thrill ride the entire time. It wasn't a merry-go-round where I'm going up and down, but in the same kind of circle. I found a lot of cards that were very high risk and high reward, and it impacted the field in a variety of different ways, in which you're like going through such a control or such a good dive of like moving yourself forward. There's such good engines. There's ways to completely hose players, excel your board, stop things flat in their tracks. And I mean, I enjoyed it. I would suggest if you're looking for some stuff that could be like very powerful, that would totally stump your friends when they see it, and want to make sure you're saying the card is right, that's full of this set.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail exactly on the head, actually, and I'm going to talk more about this later on, but the name of the game in Nemesis seems to be these high-risk, high-reward type cards. And you got to have some guts to play with some of these cards, but that's what makes them kind of awesome, in my opinion. I found some hidden gems that was a pretty nice balance between casual and competitive cards. I didn't think there was anything super overpowered in this set, but they all fit into their various niches very nicely.
I agree. I don't think it was anything that revolutionized the game.
No.
But even for you black players out there, it's like, I don't care about the cost. I'll do it, and I'm going to win anyways. There's a couple cards in there like you would even consider, again, even being a black player. But
yeah.
That actually is a little steep right there. So, again, check it out. I talk about a handful of them because I was on a thrill ride. It was great.
It's all interesting stuff, but speaking of the individual cards, let's go talk about the money cards for a minute here, Stu, because kind of going back to my initial point, the most expensive card in the entire set we saw was Core Haven, which was $8. That kind of, sets the trend right there. This isn't a very expensive set. There aren't that many really, really sought-after cards in the set so much that it drives the price way up. Some of them have gone up over time, granted, but there's not any real big money cards because they're all so niche in their little uses.
Well, all right, so what I will say is the ones that we do see for money cards were staples, and we see why they were staples. We see the Mog Catcher, which was a high one.
Yeah.
Red needs that across the board. That's a card that's not going to disappear for what it needs or its value.
Right.
And if I agree, if I see a lands are typically the first card in the set. If it isn't, then I know it has something a little bit more off the grid. So a little depressing on that side. Nothing too crazy, nothing too flashy. But again, having good cards that are low cost, it is a good thing. So I'm not opposed to that in the slightest.
No, I think that was about all there really is to say about the money cards. I mean, for example, you adequately pointed out that Belb's Portal, that was one you got for a while back for like $1 or
a money
$2,
card.
and then it went up there.
So, and again, I feel like, and I'm seeing this more and more as I play Magic or I play new players or I go to new places to play, there isn't a lot of Magic literacy in old cards. But this is a very old set, and you don't really see people saying like, yo, check out Nemesis, check out Mercadian Masks. I've gone through and I've found a good amount of cards that I liked. I told them to you. You disagreed. I proved you wrong. And then those cards actually go up in value. So these would be sets to maybe check out to see if there's something that you would be interested in using. Because I found them and I haven't been wrong with any of the cards I bought. Not as just specs for profiteering, but for versatility in decks. And by that leading me, I have not been wrong yet. So take it for what you want. But enough of me going on with that rant. Lore. Kyle, this is your specialty. What is the story happening in Nemesis?
All right, well, I'll try to boil it down as much as I can, but basically the Mercadian Masks block was kind of the filler episode between the action-packed Tempest block, where the Weatherlight goes on a rescue mission to Wrath to rescue its crewmates.
It's still Phyrexians, though.
Yes, sort of. And then between that and the invasion block, where the actual invasion of Dominaria happens, that was like, the pinnacle of the entire Magic story up to that point. The Mercadian Masks block is kind of the filler episode where things take shape for the final battle, but nothing significant actually happens. So Nemesis in particular focused on a handful of characters Krovax, one of the former Weatherlight crew members who sort of went to the dark side and got left on Wrath, the artificial plane that eventually overlays onto Dominaria, enabling the invasion. But there's also Urtai, another former Weatherlight crew member who gets left behind on Wrath for other reasons.
So it's Survivor, pretty much.
Yeah, there's also Volrath, the former boss, who comes back looking for revenge.
Well, he was the big bad.
Exactly. And then there's also the additional challenger of Grievin Ilvek, who is the captain of the Predator and one of the also, henchmen, but sort of big bads as well. All four of these characters are competing to see who will become the new Ivinkar, basically overlord of Wrath, the head honcho for the Phyrexian invasion. And eventually, long story short, Krovax wins. The end. So
you could have totally left it suspenseful for them to go read it. You just spoiler alert.
Well, I mean, it was pretty much a foregone conclusion. I mean,
that story did come out,
but
what, a decade ago at this point?
Yeah.
So I guess it's on there.
And then there are references to the character Beld and this. She's the
portal.
She's the judge who comes to choose Phyrexia's next top model from Phyrexia. So yeah, she's even a character. So she has a whole backstory herself, and that's a whole thing. But also, one key thing that does happen at the end of this story is that the kind of Wrath resistance that's led by like the elves in the forest and all that, they use a portal eventually to evacuate the entire world to Dominaria, and therefore join forces with the heroes there, setting up for the final conflict.
So this is pretty much like the Dragon Ball Z episode where they're just staring at each other, like, you're going to see my Form 3, and...
yes.
But you don't see it in that episode.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly what this is.
You don't have the whole episode of them just screaming and growing hair.
Yeah.
So, all right, that's fair. I get where you're coming from with that. But it sounds interesting. It sounds like it's building up to a pivotal point, like you said.
Yes. It's just, it's doing the hard story work to get there, not necessarily giving us much by itself,
That's fair. Well, that's a little taste of the lore.
Yep.
So we're going to go on to the impact now of this entire set. I mean, obviously the lore doesn't truly affect the impact, but a little bit here and there.
Maybe a little bit.
So, well, actually now, since we don't know where the whole story is going to lie with Nicol Bolas and Ravnica and all that stuff, it could have potential plays with Phyrexians.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the initial impact, Kyle, you just monologued. I'll let you keep monologuing right now. So you go on. Well, how did you feel?
I'll make it short. Basically, I think this introduces a lot of cool things to Magic. It introduces permanence with spell-like effects, the seals, the spell shapers, those kind of things. They're very cool. Discarding's a good thing. We've been over it before. It does provide some competitive worthy cards, Daze being my primary example, because that is played heavily. But I think it's mostly just fun for us Commander and casual crowds for the most part. Things that you wouldn't see most places, but as I've said before, and I'll say it again, very niche in where they belong. But where they do belong, they're definitely kind of scary in a lot of cases, but still, I think there's some really good stuff to be had here. You just have to think about it.
So where is that going to line up for you on our spectrum here? So we got, just a reminder again, we got bronze, silver, gold, platinum. Out of that, where's it lie?
Well, for me, I kind of wanted to give it a gold, but I'm going to settle for a silver on Nemesis. I am, because I think none of the cards are overwhelmingly powerful. There's not really a whole lot for this set to be remembered by. However, that being said, there is no shortage of fun-looking stuff in here to experiment and play around with, and I plan to do that, even more so now, having seen some of these cards. And something I really liked, as I said before, was the high-risk, high-reward playstyle that this kind of encourages. Sort of goes back to the lore, with this whole thing being a battle of the gladiators, basically.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting, because you have to be prepared to pay a lot and give up a lot to get a lot. And that's something that may turn people off, but I enjoy the challenge of that kind of thing. You have to have some serious guts to play with something that halves your life total just to get rid of a single creature, for example.
You know what? That segues perfectly into mine. I love it for that reason. And like you said, it's niche now, but as we see more and more commanders come out, so many cards just have new plays. Like once Hapatra hit the field, how many cards just jumped in value and versatility? And how much were people trying to scrounge for anything to be like, oh my goodness, this goes here. Serrated arrows? Oh my god, that's so much better here. Like before, this deck has, this set has so much potential for, and it's just begging for like something to just come slightly close to it, and you'll totally use so many of these high risk, high reward cards. And for that, I'm going to give it a gold. I think it has the longevity to sustain itself in Magic. It might not be the key player right now, but I think the set can go up. I think it really has the stuff to make it so it can out-eat some of the newer cards that most people are looking at and scrutinizing. To be like, that's good, but this one's that, but on steroids. I mean, high risk, high reward, like we said, it can't beat that point anymore. Really, really. And then check out part 1. We wasted no time showing you some of those cards.
Definitely.
My first one was one of them. And again, you might disagree with it or whatever, but as we progress through that list, you'll definitely see like, all right, that's more high risk, that's more high reward. And it makes sense as it goes through. So
yeah, I'm going to settle for good. Not great, but good.
it's like Robin. It has the buildings for greatness. It just is still a little kid. So that's how I rank this thing. It has the potential to really grow for it. If Wizards starts to look at different mechanics, I mean, a lot of the stuff here involves the stack. And a lot of stack players are very competitive. So being able to actively respond at instant speed to certain threats, always important, always huge. And this was not a stranger to that at all.
No, definitely. But I think that about wraps it up, don't you?
I do, actually. So that is going to be concluding today's video and also this set as a whole for Nemesis. And if you enjoyed the cards or want to dive more in, please check out the prior videos. Pretty sure you can grab on this little bubble in the corner over here and just find out whichever one you're looking for.
Definitely, and of course you can also let us know what you thought about everything under the sun here in the comments down below, or reach out to us on our social media platforms, Reddit, Twitter, Facebook, we got them all, at the handle MTG The Card Pool.
And also, let's do a poll right now. If you think that we should have ranked this set higher or lower, click on and say which one of us is a little bit closer. But until then, I'm Stu Galetta.
And I'm Kyle Robertson.
And we'll see you next time at the Card Pool.